Welcome to Ludonarrative Dissidents, a podcast about role-playing games, their culture, design, and play. Each episode deep dives into one tabletop RPG book, mechanic, or style of game, taking it apart to see how it works and putting it back together to understand how people play it. I'm Ross Payton, joined by Greg Stolze and James Wallace. We've all written for RPGs, published our own games, and have worked in the field for years. You can learn more about us at ludonarrativedissidents.com. Hello, this is Ross Payton with Ludonarrative Dissidents. This is Season 3, Episode 23, Vampire: The Masquerade, Chicago by Night for 5th edition Vampire. This is a campaign supplement book. It was originally published in 2018. The lead developer is Matthew Dawkins, but written by numerous writers, including people we've talked about before. Some names I recognize: Chris Spivey. I also recognize Malcolm Shepard, Eddie Webb. There's a lot of hands created this book.
Jose Garcia, my man.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, some people we actually know. And it is
Jose R. Garcia.
Yes, I think we've covered that at some point.
You know about the two Jose's Garcia. Yeah, this is the good one.
This is the good one.
Suddenly I'm just picturing Face Off.
See, I know old Jose Garcia, but I haven't met the new Jose
good
Garcia.
One. Yeah.
Yes.
The new and improved.
This is going to mean nothing to people. A chap called Jose Garcia set up a company called Daedalus. They did Shadow Fist, the card game, which became Feng Shui, the role-playing game. They did something else. They did, was it Nexus? A Robin Laws game.
Yes.
And then went very bankrupt indeed in the collectible card crunch of the late 90s. Fast forward 20 years or so, there's a new Jose Garcia in town. Perhaps unsurprising, it's not that uncommon a name, but they are not the same person, as far as we know.
I had the unhappy duty of explaining to this game designer just getting into the field how many prominent and influential voices would hear the name Jose Garcia and recoil with loathing. He's like, what? I'm like, no, it's not you. It's the other guy with your exact name who ripped off Robin Laws and, John Tynes and me.
Tweet as well, I think. Yeah.
Chris Pramus.
Well, at any rate, the good Jose Garcia worked on this book. And what a book it is 357 pages of everything you wanted to know about Chicago in the world of darkness. It is not only a campaign book, it is also a sort of meta campaign book for a vampire, as it introduces the clan La Sombra to 5th edition Vampire, and even has published a packaged adventure so the player characters can be part of this major world-changing event in the world of darkness. But yeah, there's a lot to cover. I wanted to include a book like this in our season, cover this sort of like city regional source book that is popular in some role-playing games. And I think it is a very interesting book to read because it really explores what it means to be a Vampire: The Masquerade campaign versus, say, a D&D campaign or any number of other role-playing games. Because in Vampire, the dungeon, the map, the territory are more than anything else the people, or the vampires in this case. This is a game of intrigue and politics, and this book's primary focus are on the kindred of Chicago. Who are they? How do they relate to each other? Which is something not a lot of role-playing games cover. How do NPCs relate to each other in this very Machiavellian campaign setting? So I found that a very interesting change of pace. But yeah, I'm just talking about broad strokes at this point. Mm-hmm. Greg is our resident vampire expert.
I'm glad you put the expert on the end there.
Yes, you can see the sun in Greg's little webcam. So if he's a vampire, he's a daywalker, or he's got a very good green screen going on. So Greg, what are some of your initial thoughts in looking at this book?
Counting it up, there are 54 GMCs statted up in there, divided by clan and prominence. And when I was reading this, in the course of reading this, I listened to our Gradient Descent episode where I was going on and on about how I didn't feel there was enough there. And that I'm like, give me more, writers, come on, you're being paid.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm like, oh, am I going to just swing to the exact opposite problem? Because I'm like, man, there is just, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's come on, writers, you're being paid by the word. It's worth saying this is the third edition of the Chicago by Night source book. The first edition came out in 1991. It was one of the very first source books for Vampire the Masquerade. Second edition, with almost unseemly haste, end of 93, early 94, I think. And both of those were pushing 200 pages, not more. And this is double the size. Okay, they've waited a good few years to do it. It's 25 years late or so later, this one comes out. It is double the size, and it's a book. I felt very much a book to be read rather than a book to be referred to. I didn't feel it was terribly well organized. I felt it was something that people buy. You listeners, you know this. Look at your bookshelves. There are some role-playing games you buy knowing that you want. There's always the promise that you can get them to the table and that your players will really love it. But I would say 8 out of 10 of the RPGs that you buy will never get anywhere near your table. You may enjoy reading them. You may enjoy rereading them or reading them for reference to take elements for other games. This, I think, is a source book you could only use for Vampire, but it would be a hard book to refer to while you're playing on the table. There's no index, for a start. 357 pages, no index. I get the impression, and I may be jumping the gun on this, I get the impression that the last few editorial stages of this book were very rushed. Some of the layout is clearly rushed. Some of the editorial it is missing passes it should have had. There are sentences that make no sense. There are things that a final couple of passes would have caught. Although White Wolf, other people, the company that introduced C Page XX into the role-playing game industry vernacular, they were legendary for not doing final proof passes on their books and letting egregious errors like that get through. I don't think there's any Page XXs. That I believe we have an early PDF. So there are, in fact, some, but I don't think they got out into the final release version. But there's no rubric. There's no page that states when, the year it was printed or the copyright or stuff like that. And that's weird. It feels like a strange kind of ghost book that's, lacking this core information that almost every book has.
It's copyright.
Yeah, there is a copyright page.
There is a copyright page?
Page 1. Literally after the front covers.
Okay, let me check. It has the copyright, but it does not say year of publication on that. Certain basic information. There's the kind of library data, the ISBN. It's not there.
Well, again, this is a pre-release PDF, so I think this.
Pretty
this
sure.
was...
I checked. This may not be the final release candidate, but I checked the DriveThruRPG sample PDF, which is of the first however many pages it is, and it's largely identical to what we have here.
Okay, fair enough.
So I felt this. You actually have the Greg has the print version. That's interesting because when we did Vampire,
this is not the print version.
Yeah, the cover art's different.
This is World of Darkness Chicago, which was the Chicago supplement for the new World of Darkness that these 5th edition books have reversed from. So I worked on this one. It is 422 pages, including the index.
Oh man, and apparently not available on the second-hand market, which is where I was looking for things. I'm sorry, my knowledge has a massive 400.
When you said that this was the World of Darkness Chicago source book that we're examining, I'm like, no, it's not. It's the Vampire the Masquerade Chicago source book. This one that I worked on was for all the lines smooshed together and interrelated, because one of the hopes and ambitions of New World of Darkness was to make them play with each other a little better. And I don't know how well that worked. But when you were talking about editorial passes, I've got to do it. If you're playing the drinking game, get ready. Because I did a word search, 458 instances of will. My note just says disgraceful. And I also felt that page references would be nice in the character relationship write-ups because, like I said, there's 50 characters here. And as I'm going through, I'm like, wait, okay, is this the one who's secretly the really, really old Ventru who's pretending to be a young Tremere? Which one is this? Is this the old racist dude or is this the old nihilist dude? And so it would have been nice. It's nice that they have the art for each character, and in their relationships maps, you can see the pictures, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember that, the guy with the hat. And, the human brain is definitely wired up to recognize faces. So it's very helpful to have that art as a hook you can hang your attention on, and it'll help you remember. But yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces in this.
Yes, and also it's worth mentioning that, yes, some of the names are people like Sir Olaf the One-Eyed King and Bobby the Hurricane Weatherbottom, quite memorable. And then you've got Kevin Jackson and Naomi Stewart the Ventru. I defy you to read that and remember those 200 pages after you first encountered them. Actually, it wouldn't be because they're in the middle of the book.
You remember Kevin Jackson? He's the damn prince.
He's the prince, but it's not a memorable name. They could have come up with something a little bit better than that.
Well, I think that was the point, was to make him like a regular person. I mean, they do have the aside from the individual kindred write-ups, they do have the coterie section, which shows relationship maps between each sort of like clique of vampires or coterie. This person views Damien views Kathy as close family, and Kathy views Damien as responsibility. Well, because again, this is not something I see in RPG books at all, really. On a broad level, I do want to talk a little bit about a review I just did for another book for RPPR, where me and Julian Kay, the author of Mutants in the Now, reviewed a Rifts book, which was Rifts Dimension Book 10, Hades. And if there's ever like a Goofus and Gallant kind of way in broad strokes, like this is it, because the Rifts book is like, it's Hades, it's hell, here's random tables of all the ways your characters can catch on fire. And there's just thousands of square miles of wilderness and monsters that want to kill you, and you just go to any page and it's just like, this place is awful and terrible and there's nothing for you to do and you'll probably die if you go there. All right, cool. And it's like there's very few plot hooks, very few things the GM can wrap their head around to be like, aha, there's the adventure, there's what I can do. But in this book, every single random page I would flip to and be like, oh, there's something I could grab and mine for gameable material. It has context, it provides a variety of types of places for characters to explore and people to meet and interact with. But like that sheer contrast between how Palladium does it and how like Vampire's handling it is very stark. So do you have to commend Chicago by Night by at least like, first and forward, this is like a book to be used as a campaign, but James's criticism about like, this is not something you have actually at the table is also something I kind of thought about when I was reading through the adventure, because like this is a book you have to do your homework on and take notes on and like derive stuff to, like you have to really condense it into stuff to have at the table, because it is not something you can like flip to. It's not like a Merkborg book where you just flip it, there's the adventure, there's the thing, run it as is. It's like, boy, you really gotta like take these are the ingredients and then you have to like craft them into something that your players can do, because like the one blank spot in this book is obviously the player characters. Who are they and how are they going to interact with all these things? And like that's something that the book can't do for you, but like maybe it's just inherent to vampire games that you can't have that instantly put it at the table kind of thing. But I don't know,
it was a problem I found with superhero games and with writing for superhero or superpowered character settings, because in Rifts there is a presumption that you are good guys who are trying to protect the innocent and kick the bad guys' asses. And so the plot of A Glitter Boy in Hell is, oh, wow, there's a lot of bad guys. Man, I better warm up my ass-kicking foot, my gold-plated ass-kicking foot.
Yep.
Whereas in Vampire, it is perfectly legitimate to have one character who's like, oh, I'm trying to preserve my precious humanity, and I'm only gonna, I don't want to kill anyone, but I know that I must harm to live or harm to survive, and so I'm only gonna harm bad people, and I'm gonna be a vigilante looking out for the little guy, and you will have them alongside the guy who's like, I just eat blondes. I want to find blonde women and feed from them. I am playing Vampire the Masquerade to let my shadow self out. And you got to be ready for both of that. You've got to be ready for the for the player who's like, I want to be more, I want to aspire to a moral state higher than that of my political antagonists. And at the same time, you might have an entire coterie that's like, I aspire to overcome antagonists by being 1,000 times worse than they ever dreamed of being. That's why I've got this bone saw. It's for mortals. And you have to be ready for both. You have to, and you also don't know what set of powers they're going to have, how they are going to be set up. If you have a group that is all Gangrel and Bruja, and it's like, oh, yes, we will meet things directly with force, as is our traditional way, then anything you write for Vampire has to be prepared for that. And it also has to be prepared for, oh, we are all Malkavians and Toreador, and we are just going to get our way by freaking with the square's brains and playing with people as if their minds and willpower are chewed gum.
It's really interesting you brought that point up with the superhero genre. And like one common criticism of Vampire, especially the older edition, was it's superheroes with fangs, right? But like there's thematic elements in both, in that kind of like, I don't want to say necessarily soap opera element, but it is like interpersonal character relationships that are focused. You know, there is a new video game that came out called Dispatch, where you're playing a dispatcher for superheroes. It's kind of like a Telltale game where you're like, it's all about how you get along with these other superheroes and your relationships with them and making moral choices about them. You know, which superhero do you want to date and all that kind of fun stuff. And so like these are games about people, not about environments, like D&D is.
Yes.
Yeah. And this book is really about that, because it really gets into who shaped the Chicago political scene for vampires, what happened before affects what's happening now and what's going to happen next, and at what point do the player characters fit in. And so like it's a very different way than most role-playing games cover these kind of things, because they would focus more on like, oh, here's a cool place to investigate, or here's a mystery, and there are things like that in here, but it's not it's not
they throw
200 pages of this book are those characters.
Yeah. Classically, there's two ways to do a city source book. There's the kind of set it all up as a playground, like a pinball table, pretty much, and the players can bounce around from thing to thing, have encounters, have fun, run little mini adventures, which just kind of trigger on their own. And then there's the ones that's like a snapshot in time. It's like we have freeze-framed the entire city and all its political spectrum, and here is everything laid out for you with all the dominoes ready to topple. Which ones are you going to topple first? And that, I think, is what this one is. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of bits where it says literally X is trying to do Y right at the moment. I would have put that in a sidebar or in a subsequent adventure, but no, it's in the main text. So it's like, okay, but then what happens once that's happened? Once you're past that crux, how does that situation development? What's the status quo then? It's trying to be hugely complete. The one thing I didn't get from it, I have to say, was much of a sense of Chicago. There's a couple of maps, there's a couple of brief discussions of the neighborhoods and stuff, but I didn't get, and I've spent a reasonable, I used to work for a Chicago company, 25 years ago. Not for very long, but enough time to spend a decent amount of time in the city itself. It has a unique flavor. It has unique characteristics. It did not capture, it was so intent on capturing what was going on with the vampire stuff that I felt Chicago as a city, as a living, breathing place, which in a good city source book, the city is a character as much as anything else. Did not feel it got that. And I wish I could compare it to other versions of the same source book. Greg, perhaps you can comment. But as I've said before, I'm not a vampire player. I'm not terribly interested in games with vampires as protagonists. So I never followed the line that closely.
Oh, so chapter 3, which is about Chicago and has new rules called the homesteading rules. That goes from page 47 to 74. And that covers the entire city and the geography and what each neighborhood, each sort of region is like, and some like geographical highlights. And then like chapter 4, Kindred of Chicago, goes from page 79 to page 226. So yeah, they're in terms of page count, that would, and the homesteading rules are only a couple pages long, and they're kind of interesting.
Homesteading is a cute concept as well. It works quite, seems to work quite nicely from a quick read through, but doesn't feel like something that is unique to Chicago. You could apply it to any conurbation. Yeah,
should have been in the core book, I feel.
I was looking at the homesteading. I'm like, okay, mechanizing your house, expanding on coterie merits from the main book. Is it crucial? No. Desirable, or is this rules for rules' sake? I don't know if I would have used those. I feel like you covered this in the main book to the extent that I want it covered, and this is, not everything has to be for me. So I'm sure there are people who are like, no, I'm going to do my block by block breakdown of the homesteads of Chicago.
We're past the Judges Guild days of itemizing a city building by building, business by business, statting out the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker, just in case you want to take them down and search their place for treasure.
Right.
But
yes.
At the same time, I felt I wasn't looking for detailed maps of the city. I was looking for a sense of its character, a sense of how its people regard what is special about Chicago. In the way that New York has a very dynamic personality and LA has a dynamic personality that's very different. What makes Chicago, which is often overlooked, particularly for us who are not Native Americans, you ask your typical Londoner on the street, what's different about Chicago? And I'm guessing they might say something about a baseball team, but that's about it.
The back of this one, they actually used I think I might have written this quote, but it's, Chicago isn't corrupt. It's passionate, genuine, willing to do whatever it takes to be the city it wants to be, and corrupt.
Minor applause to anyone whoever did write that.
I can't remember if I did or not. I hope I did.
Some of the Chicago history is also in the character write-ups, like Kevin Jackson, the Prince of the City, has a lot of
which you have to piece together. And if we are arguing that this has that closet drama thing where this is a book to be read as much as it is a book to be played, then I can see where there would be a great pleasure in the reading where you're like, okay, and now it's starting to come together. The deeper I get into this, the more I see, oh, that's who this person really is and what they're really doing and what the real motivations behind all this are. But the inevitable downside to that, the counterpart, is that when you start, you don't know what's going on. And it's like, so where's go on the Monopoly board of this? What do I start with? Because you kind of have to hit all these different coteries running to know how they interact.
I think it depends on what the players are interested, right? Like, I'm thinking about it. If I was going to run this as a campaign, I would treat it like I did Delta Green Impossible Landscape. I read the entire book and did we did a session 0 for every player character. And I found out who the players were and what they were interested in. And then I planned session 1, and then I started working on the game itself. I would read this cover to cover to properly give it justice. It is not a pick up and run kind of game. It is you have to absorb it and sort of think about a lot of these less pronounced links between characters and history and the city itself. So, I mean, it allows a depth of, you figured out the secret link between these two characters and you're able to exploit it and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of potential to create these setups that really pay off and have a really interesting moment in it. But you can't just read the first 3 chapters and start running it, right? You really need to absorb this whole book, I feel.
And it is hard to have everything be tightly connected and really interestingly interlaced when you have a large staff writing it. If this was if this was the magnum opus of one writer, I imagine it would be a lot tighter, or it could be a lot tighter. That, as it is, it's set up that, do you want to do a Vampire the Masquerade version of Drag Race? Are you a big Drag Race fan? Because we have got a setup for you in the Blood Disco, and you will have a lovely time. If you're a nostalgic old vampire grognard, The Succubus Club is still there for you. If you just want to go where the pretty people get their necks bitten, well, there's a club for that too. You don't necessarily get a rundown of the vibes of different Chicago areas, which might have been a little more useful. But you do get, if you are running the very personality-based, political favor swapping, table hopping in high school with the popular kids setup, you've got the settings you need for that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the books I was reading at the same time I was reading this is A History of Jepson's Malort, which is a beverage that for a while you could only buy in Chicago, and which has a famous flavor. If you haven't heard of it, it's made with wormwood. It's extremely, extremely, extremely bitter. So I'm reading this book about how this caught on in Chicago and why it was always there and why it sort of had this renaissance in recent years. So I did a search in the book for Malort, and it turns out there is a reference to Malort in here, but it's a name of one of the characters in the adventure, and it doesn't explain anything about the liquor that I was able to find. So I'm like, man, you missed that one. You missed Henry H.H. Holmes.
Like, they apparently had Al Capone as a character in previous editions of this book, but he's no longer. There's the Capone gang, but like Capone himself is not started out as a vampire, which, for what it's worth.
One of the things I found working on Vampire the Requiem, right, where they were like, okay, we're going to change a bunch of stuff, is that anytime you change something in a setting that people are so invested in, you are going to get one group of people who are like, oh, thank God you took that out. That always bothered me and I hated it. And you're going to have another group of people just about as large and just about as loud saying, how dare you take out my favorite thing, you bastards. I'll never buy anything from you again. The classic Requiem example that I think I may have cited before was nerfing celerity, and that nobody seemed to have a neutral opinion of the celerity power, which is just the, hyper fast. There were the people who were like, this is the greatest thing ever. I'm going to take as much of it as I can. And there were the people who were like, I don't like that I only get to do one thing for every 4 things that the guy with celerity gets to do. That seems unfair, and I want my game to be fair.
We've said before, gamers want the new thing, but they want the new thing to be just like the old thing.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, the meat of this book are the characters. There's a wide variety of them, but all manner of clans, all manner of political allegiances. But some of the characters, it did seem that the characters seemed a little too edge on a bit too low generation, too powerful, especially because Vampire the Masquerade, as we previously talked, they talk about in the new edition, there's the beckoning, which is why you clear the slate of these elders that control everything and you can't do anything against. The elders are all being drawn to the Middle East to fight the War of the Methuselahs and the Antediluvians. But in this one, we still have some elder vampire. There's literally one vampire, Bruja, the Critias, the doctor, the philosopher, who's literally was embraced in 423 BCE. So he's an ancient Greek philosopher, and he is here 5th generation, but he's fighting off the beckoning by staying involved in Chicago politics. Kind of like sort of undermining the core book's premise when you have 5th generation vampires running around still manipulating things.
There is only one thing that can fight off the beckoning. You must feed from someone who has drunk Jepson's Malort. Available only in Chicago and parts of Wisconsin.
I want that to be true. I want that. Yeah.
There are also, it's implied that living in the lake is Lilith, right? Cain's old boots knocking buddy is down in the water manipulating things and has been in America before the white man got here. Yeah. So if you want to have an extremely high powered setup, pieces are in play. And that is a little, I'm like, okay, no, that's kind of gothic, cool, spooky, old style Masquerade stuff of, oh, no, the elders are in your head, man. They are living in there and rearranging furniture. It talks about, characters who have had their elders get beckoned, and then they wake up and they're like, oh my God, I have been a puppet for 5 decades. Shit, I am never going back into that. I got to do whatever it takes to keep my head straight and maintain my freedom.
The philosopher, actually, that's his problem, is that his sire did get beckoned, and now he's like, oh, was I a puppet this entire time? Who am I? What am I? So, which is an interesting plot hook, again.
Yeah, he just sounds like every other philosophy student I've known.
But we're not even talking about the oldest of them, I think, is Narissa Blackwater, who is this plot, effectively 4th generation, embraced circa 4000 BCE Caitiff or wildcard section, I think.
Now she's listed under Caitiff.
She is a Caitiff. But, they have a whole page about who is Narissa Blackwater? Maybe she's this, maybe she's that. Maybe she isn't even a vampire. Maybe she's something else that's even worse. Or maybe it's all a con, or maybe, I like that every character has multiple plot hooks and these kind of things. But having such powerful vampires so many of them, it seems like, does kind of underride the 5th edition, like, no, you actually get to matter in this game, in this version of Vampire. Certainly the adventure is the main way for player characters to prove that they matter if you want to run it, because the meta plot of this book is that the Lasombra clan, which were on the side of the Sabbat, are trying to join the Camarilla, which is the Masquerade, the sort of default association for vampire characters in this game. There's an adventure where 2 Lasombra diplomats come to Chicago, and the player characters have to escort them and are pivotal in sort of determining if the Lasombra are going to be able to join the Camarilla, or at least take sanctuary in Chicago. And thus, I guess somehow that applies to the rest of the Camarilla. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting adventure, but man, it's kind of like a blueprint for an adventure. It's very railroady as written because, it's a meta plot of it. It kind of has to. You would have to do a lot of work to customize it for an individual group of player characters. It's a lot happens and a lot of things can happen. It's a very complex machine, but man, I would have to spend like a couple of hours to figure out how to run it for X group of players.
I was going to say, it's got like IKEA instructions with it. I just wanted to make an IKEA joke. Sorry.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There's a number of scenes where it felt like the player characters are essentially watching a major part of Vampire, the 5th edition history happen. They are not actually involved in it. And I've spoken before, and I can't remember which episode it was, about Wrath of the Lich King, the World of Warcraft expansion, where the plots, it's the 3rd one. Blizzard finally got their act together and started making the player characters feel like they mattered in what was happening in Azeroth. I mean, obviously everyone's following the same plot chains and quest chains. Everyone's going through the same experiences, but there's this huge cinematic of you're about to assault the kingdom of the Lich King in the icy wastes, and you're up against the things, and there's an actual, they use the game engine for it, and there's all the major characters, and they could have just dropped your PC in the middle of that because it's all being generated on the fly by the game engine, and they don't. And that was the moment I felt, no, you're still not there. You still haven't quite got what players want from this. They want to be standing next to the big cheeses. And then there's a bit where you do get to go off on an adventure with them, but you want it to be part of the cinematic. There are the equivalent of cinematics within this scenario, and you are essentially a spectator. And this is not a bang up to date. This book is 6-7 years old now. It still felt like design from not even the 90s, from the 80s.
I mean, the players can totally screw it up, and Lasombra they get killed by rival vampires, or it just fails horribly because the players have a lot of hurdles to jump through, right? They have to deal with like 3 hostile groups before the diplomats even get into the city, and then one of the diplomats runs off to go be a murder hobo, and then like there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And it actually getting the Lasombra in to be accepted by the Chicago Vampires is looks pretty hard for the players to pull off, but it's kind of assumed that it's going to happen. At least the writing of the Lasombra clan in the book is like, oh yeah, they're part of the Camarilla now. So it's kind of weird. It's very railroady, but it's also very difficult. The players have a lot to do, and it's also like social and combat. So the players have to be pretty competent in both areas to really get through, because there's like literally a group of vampires from Gary, Indiana come up to like kill the diplomats, and like they're statted out pretty beefy. They're pretty tough guys, I think. It's kind of a weird beast of an adventure. I'd have to modify it for my players. You know, like if they're combat monsters, great. But if they're social characters, I'd have to change a lot of stuff, right? Like, so they don't have to deal with the Gary, Indiana hit squad.
Yes, I mean, it does also assume that these are characters who have been established for a while. Their powers have advanced. They've got the skills that they're going to need to, but also that the players understand all the ins and outs and little intricacies and back history of the interactions between the different clans in Chicago and in the wider area, and why La Sombra coming on board is such a honking big deal. I felt like reading this, I felt like I was reading book 4 of 5 in a fantasy vampire romance series that was a bit light on the romance, and nobody had told me that there was books 1 to 3 that I should have read first. Yeah. It felt like kind of coming in towards the you're in season 7 of a soap opera, essentially. Yeah. All the characters established. You're supposed to know who these people are and what they were doing 5 years ago and why they hate each other as a result.
Yeah. No, it is very deep on the lore. It's very much for the diehard vampire fans. Like one of the people, the first obstacle is like, oh, this one vampire wants to go mess with the diplomats, but he doesn't care about money. And he doesn't care about this. And there's only one social way to like, and he's not afraid of anything. And there's only one angle that he would actually appeal to him on a rhetorical level. And so you got to know that one angle you could use to manipulate him. But other than that, it's going to be a big problem. And it's like, wow, this is oof. It's a tough hurdle.
Oh, I was thinking back to the Eon Trinity books and people's complaints about the meta plot there that, okay, yeah, great. There are these hugely powerful characters that you can't even scratch. And some parts of this introductory adventure are you just watching them do their thing to each other. Cool. Love that. Everybody gets into escapism to be a spectator. It seems to be a problem that White Wolf and that the World of Darkness and that their lines have, I'm not going to say had all the time, but it is a recurring problem that's popped up. And it may be something that happens elsewhere, but people just hate it specifically within the context of White Wolf and these products because their meta plot heavy books at the beginning were so hugely popular and such huge sellers and became such a subculture within the tabletop role-playing game scene that if you weren't part of that, you needed something to hang your hatred on. And it couldn't just be, I don't like these new players because they're gloomy and have a higher percentage of women. Back in the 90s, you couldn't say that. It's not like now when misogyny is mainstream, though still, honestly, so gross and such a bad idea. I want people to know my position on misogyny in gaming. I'm again it.
Misogyny anywhere. I think we can say that all three of us are quite down on that.
Sure.
Do by all means flee to Spotify at the moment and place a ranty review about how we're all woke and leftist apologists. I love those labels. I will have those. If I were a tattooing guy, I'd have those tattooed across my chest.
Bona fides, yeah.
The hatred just makes us stronger. But that doesn't mean that meta plots were a great idea. So, to drag this kicking and screaming back to relevance, meta plots, on one hand, are interesting and seem to have, at least at some time, have been a good marketing hook. They were profitable at least. But at the same time, I guess part of it, this is an attempt. Meta plots are an attempt for the game designer, the writer, to say, okay, look, you haven't been doing this for a decade and aren't an English major, and that's fine. We can't all be, but I am. So I'm going to try and create something great for you that you could not build on your own. And when that works in adventure design, it's terrific. I mean, in mechanic design, I think we're back to Bluebeard's Bride. No one thought that, let's have each different player be a metaphor for an aspect or mood of a single character in a single fairy tale. That's a pretty big swing. And in that case, I think it connected. And here, these very writerly writers want to write. And they're like, I don't want to apologize for putting too much literature in my literature. I'm going to give you a big, complicated thing with a lot of complicated characters interacting in complicated ways and not always sure of their own motivations. And, and try it. And here is this giant toy box of 50 odd vampires. And, get to work breaking the arms off them.
That's the thing about this book is that if I was running a vampire campaign, I would get a book like this book or whatever city I wanted to set it into, because I don't want to write up 50 detailed NPCs and do relationship maps between all of them to figure out how these cliques work. Like, oh man, that's a lot more work than just reading a long book. There's another thing I really like that this book did, which is are the lore sheets, which started around 260 and 261, and they're real interesting little characters get these background advancements or that they can spin, and so you can be like, you have an in with Ballard Industries, and so you can get payoffs from them, or you can get talk to the guy running the company, or about Black Site 24, and here's what about Black Site 24 and how you can use that as a way to get an edge in the game. You because about it, or you've even escaped from it, the vampires, you have a lot of information that's very valuable to the kindred of the city, and so you can leverage that for any number of ways. And so I really like that level of, I could do that individually, sure, but I don't like for an entire city's worth of stuff. Geez, that would take as long. I don't want to, I don't want to write a book just to run a campaign. So I'll just take this pre-published stuff. One thing we haven't mentioned is, speaking of inclusivity, the characters in this are a lot more diverse than in previous editions. The Kevin Jackson, the Prince of the City, is African-American. He grew up in Chicago, I believe in the 60s. Yeah, people of color, women, and, that was a critique leveled back of the 90s version. I think that it was very, white and dude oriented. This version is a lot better in that regard. The crux of running a vampire campaign is having this masquerade ball full of vampires all with their own schemes, but do you want to create all those 50 people, or do you just want to have them at hand and be able to pick it up? That's, I think, the inherent nature of running a vampire campaign. So unless you want to set it in a small town when you only have to deal with 12 vampires, then do the Gary, Indiana campaign, then you're going to deal with a lot more.
This is the gravest political hootenanny that Beloit, Wisconsin's vampire community has ever faced. Summon Steve and Jenna. Oh, Steve and Jenna? Are you sure, my prince? Do it!
It's like half of us. Oh my God. They don't like each other since that one potluck dinner. I'm not gonna lie, I would love that campaign too, but that's a very different campaign than
where there's just 6 of you.
Yeah.
Has anyone done a vampire game where the player coterie they're the only vampires in town, and it's what we do in the shadows, except you'd have to set it up very antagonistically. It's like, oh yeah, you all hate each other. Also, you need each other, and also sometimes really like each other. But mostly, you hate each other.
But you need each other to survive. Yeah.
I always felt that was the way, certainly in first edition Vampire, I always felt that was the way it kind of went, because it was assumed that you'd be a group of vampires from the different clans forced together to buy whatever it was, to have to work together. And that was a really interesting dynamic and led to a lot, I think, of interesting role play and character-based stuff. And I think one of the reasons that it took off as a LARP, because it was very easy to know what to LARP. If you're in a room and they're your clan X, their clan Y, go for it. But that does seem to have rather got lost in this edition. The whole vampire-ness of it, the sense of danger and the sense of sexiness as well, which was always a big sell in the 90s, just for me was not pinging.
I mean, it's a different style for sure than the previous editions. But I mean, they do talk about, a lot of the nightclubs and places of ill repute in the city. Yeah, I think part of it is also a Fifth Ed thing, because Fifth Ed introduced the Second Inquisition, and, vampires can't use phones anymore. And this book sort of follows through with that plot bead.
In just the lifetimes of the three of us, it has become unthinkable that you might just get laid without having a phone.
Yeah. And yeah, we also talk about La Sombra as a clan, as I mentioned, but they have the whole write-up of the clan. Normally in the earlier editions back in the 90s, La Sombra would be a separate splat book. Like they've actually put like a separate smaller book inside of this, because they talk about how to make characters in La Sombra, their unique disciplines, their powers that they can do.
It's really not very much. It's like 6 or 7 pages. It's tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's spread throughout the book. There's discussions of it. But the La Sombra chapter is, it's 6 pages.
Yeah, normally they would flesh that out with like NPCs and pre-gens and stuff like that.
You're a little bit Von True and you're a little bit Tremere. You're the La Sombra. It's fun.
Yeah.
You love the church.
It does kind of undermine the thing that the La Sombra are a big deal, and them joining the big gang is also a big deal. And here they are, and we've given them all of 6 pages.
For the non-vampire playing listeners, who are, I'm guessing it's like 5 of you, of the vampire big organizations, they're all very sort of, there's the clans, but the clans gather together into the Sabbat and the Camarilla, and then there's, little independent clans outside. But the deal of the Sabbat is, we are evil. We are actually evil, and we want to do harm and crush humanity and be bad. And the deal of the Camarilla, their main opponents, is not that, oh, we're good, we're trying to retain our humanity. They're more like, no, we're indifferent. We're willing to do objectively a lot of evil stuff, but it's not like our goal. It's just we want to get by, eat well and live long, to steal a line from Dr. Sleep. That's it. That will keep it straightened out. There are no good, noble gangs with aspirations. Maybe the anarchs, if you squint and are not too picky.
Yeah, this whole thing about good versus evil doesn't really apply to vampires, because they're all literally, you have to be a predator and hurt people and usually kill them in order to survive as a vampire. So the difference between let's destroy everything, to be like, we'll be passive and evil. Let me go to brunch, okay? I don't care. As long as I can go to brunch, I'll do whatever,
Good is right out. Let's explore other options.
If you're playing vampire, that's what the game's about, right? Like that's not, that's a feature. So
I gotta look up, because I pulled a quote out on page 255, and I think it may be about the anarchs, because I did like one line quite a bit. Come on, computer, do the thing where I go to the place.
255.
And it is a subset of the anarchs, the nihilists. And the quote is, less a political group than a set of damaged personalities intensifying each other's worst aspects. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's prose. It feels like every single one of us could point to a group where, like, that's the description for them, right?
It's the internet.
On just about any scale, the internet as a whole, Facebook, these specific Facebook groups, these specific dissident Facebook groups.
It's fractal.
Yeah.
It's fractal. The damaged personalities. And then there's bits where, as I said, editorially, there's one line out of the law pushed Chicago kindred to think of Marx much differently. Much differently? That's what you've got, an adverb on an adverb there. That is not the way English works. Not even in Chicago. It just, like I said, it needed another editorial pass. And while I'm back to that, just a couple of mentions of the layout. It's a ragged right layout, which means there is no justification on the right margin, which is fine. I like a nice ragged right myself, but they've left the hyphenation on, which is a no-no. You don't hyphenate on a ragged right. And they do that the whole way through. The columns aren't balanced. And then there's a bunch of handouts. And the 5th edition rulebook, and we talked about this when we did it in the episode, it starts off with like this collage of handout. Well, they're not exactly handouts, but they're laid out. So it's like leaflets and letters and stuff. And it all comes together in that kind of red ribbon stuff, linking everything together to create a narrative and an understanding and kind of setting up what this game is going to be. And this game starts off with a bunch of kind of bits of correspondence and stuff, but they're not laid out like that, as if they ran out of time in the layout. But then you do get bits going all the way through. You get letters from high-ranking vampires to each other, written apparently in the present day using manual typewriters. They're using that manual typewriter font that is, it's just apply manual typewriter font, but everything looks like, it looks like a letter from the 1970s in the middle of and they're all using the same one. They're all using manual typewriter.
They should have had different curve. I mean, the contemporary thing you could actually explain because it's part of the second position. You can't use phones. You can't use a computer, right? Like
there's electric typewriters. there's your IBM Selectric. Come on.
I want to see an elder vampire just hunt and pecking. Like, dude. Dear Nosferatu, I hate you. Stop eating
backspace,
rats.
backspace.
Yeah, backspace.
Yeah.
Where's my whiteout, ghoul? Yeah, now we're getting back to what we do in the shadows. One thing I did like is like on page 57, we have a map of Chicago with the clan symbols on it, like whose turf is turf. You just live in the city and you're a vampire because travel's hard. And so that's your turf. But like it's so claustrophobic because even like the powerful clans or anarchs only have like so many square blocks of territory that they're really quote unquote safe in. And so like you're immortal, but you live in a 10 block radius of this place. And like that's anytime you step out of that place, you're taking your undead life into your own hands. So like, and like you can't even go to the west side anymore because werewolves have taken over this neighborhood. And so you don't know when you're ever going to get back there. And man, just being a vampire is just very, you're stuck. You're seeing the same 5-10 blocks for every night for the most part. I thought that was a pretty interesting visualization for me because like most of the time when you run vampire, it's all theater of the mind, right? Oh, you're just in the city and you have your turf, but you're just, it's more abstract. It's not like you're in, from this street to this street, Lower West Side, that's you. But you step into Chinatown and we better be nice or stealthy because they may not like you in that section. Or if you step into the East Village, the Malkavians are there and the Malkavians don't like you. So, because again, I've only played like vampire one shots or a couple games. I've never played like a full campaign of vampire.
And interestingly, no one will claim Navy Pier.
Yeah. Any other major areas that we haven't covered? I think we've kind of answered our questions about who.
Who's this for? It's for, as we've said, it's for people who are already into vampire. It doesn't feel like a lead into the background of vampire like the original Chicago by Night books did in the 90s. This is for people who are already deeply into it and are just looking for more of the same, more of that deep interplay and rich tapestries of different characters all about to go off at each other. If you're not already a vampire character, the thing I did like, and Ross, you really mentioned this, was the character interrelationship charts, which I know I've seen similar things in other role-playing games, but these ones seem particularly well done. And I have a suspicion they may have been inspired by the Cons Pyramid in Night's Black Agents, which we talked about back in the day. But this is more personal. This is about individuals rather than kind of parts of an organization. Mm-hmm. Greg, you were saying something, I think.
I think these predate that. I think I've seen them in White Wolf stuff from before Night's Black Agents.
Ah, okay. I defer to your greater knowledge of White Wolf material.
I mean, they're all from like those RICO trials of the mafia, right? Like, here's the Godfather with the consigliere below him, and like there's the lieutenants and the soldiers. It's all that kind of vampire apes the structure of criminal cartels more than anything else, right? So there's a lot of overlap genre wise. There's a lot of material for people running vampire, but like you have to invest. You need to read the whole book to really bring it to the table and really think about what your players want to do. Like what kind of, like, did they make Bruja and Gangrel combat ninjas, or did they make Malkavian and Toreador tortured artists and regular people? You know, even if I was running, I wouldn't use all 50 NPCs, right? I would use like the ones that really speak out to the player characters, and like if they go into directions like, oh, well, I know that the Anarchs are hanging out in this neighborhood, let me read up on that stuff real quick and figure out what would happen if the players went over here, or they initiated that kind of contact or whatever. But like, it's a lot. It's perfect for people running Vampire. But yeah, it is definitely for the diehard fans. This is not a casual product. This is not this. I mean, the whole Vampire Masquerade 5th edition has been sort of geared towards the people who played the earlier editions, right? It's and I think we talk about that in our review of it. It never felt like, here's how to get into vampires. And like, we know who you are, and we'll come.
They are dancing with who brought them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's Vampire the Masquerade Chicago by Night. Our next episode will be the Gumshoe Fantasy RPG Swords of the Serpentine, which is a viewer curated episode, I believe. And so that'll be a lot of fun. And then Greg's mystery pick for a curated episode, which okay, well, I was trying to give you some like a little respectability there, Greg.
I will plan one out tomorrow. I will put it in my book of to-do for Friday. Mm-hmm. Pick a game for LND.
Great. I love to hear it.
None of the contestants have more than 300 pages. So
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, and then after that, we've got 2 actual plays coming up. We've got Swords of the Serpentine with its creator, Kevin Culp, who will be GMing for us. And we will also be playing The Quiet Year with a guest facilitator. Mm-hmm. Which should be fun. That's
so cool.
I think we're going to have to do that one as a video episode, because creating the map is such an integral part of the game. It is really important that to understand what's going on, you can see the map. So we will be co-releasing that as a video and an audio version.
Yeah. We'll have it saved up on YouTube, and it'll be there, and so it should be a lot of fun. And then we'll be done with the season. Yay! Well, except I mean, for me, I have a lot of editing to do, but that's me. Yay!
James and Greg will be done with the season.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Hey, I still have to write the show notes.
Yes, that's true.
Greg will be done with the season.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for supporting us, our listeners and our new fans. Thank you for tuning in. But yeah, we'll talk to you next time. Bye.